Welcome to the Consummate Athlete Podcast, where we explore what it means to be a well-rounded, happy, goal-crushing athlete. Every week, myself, sports journalist Molly Herford, and cycling coach and kinesiologist Peter Glassford interview experts and chat through all of your training questions. We're excited to have you along for the ride. Hello. Welcome back to the Consummate Athlete Podcast, American Thanksgiving edition. Peter, how's it going?
It's going well. Yeah, we're rolling along, I guess. We are here. Yeah, hurtling towards Christmas season and holiday season.
Well, I guess we are here as we are recording this. I have to admit, we are recording this a little bit early because I need to head down to New Jersey. So by the time this goes live, I will be down there for the holiday, but also to help my mom after surgery. You know what? This time of year is disruptive. Like you said, it's the start of the holiday season, kind of no matter where you are in the world, and it gets tricky. I can tell you already, like, I'm not there yet, but I am very well aware that my training schedule is going to be effed, for lack of a better term. I won't have the gym, so my strength is going to be tricky. I'm probably not going to have the bandwidth to do my runs with what I need to be doing at home to be there for my mom. And I admit I'm struggling a little to be okay with that, but I'm also very aware that this happens to all of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like an ongoing thing. It's sort of the problem I like to solve is, with elites, they tend to not have quite as much of this going on. They still have lives, but the priorities are maybe stacked a little differently than a lot of the masters I work with. And so this is like that not perfect, not unlimited training scenario. And so that's part of why I think it's important to take your rest days, take your rest weeks throughout the year so we can train consistently, because we know that there's also going to be these like unavoidable, unplanned disruptions, whether those are a day or two here or there, or like weeks in some cases for bigger life disruptions.
Yeah. So, my plan is to still obviously keep moving, but I wanted to bring this up because it is holiday season. I know a lot of people this long weekend is going to get a little funky with family stuff going on. Maybe one too many glasses of wine, one too many pieces of pie. So this is also all to say it's okay. The Thanksgiving hangover, whether it's a hangover from the wine or the pie, is not going to end your season or wreck your 2026. So give yourself a little bit of grace this week. And also, side note, Black Friday is coming up, which, let's be honest, really usually just looks like shopping for yourself. So dropping this reminder in, we're going to put a link in the show notes to all of our favorite things, all of the stuff that we use pretty much day in, day out for cycling, running, etc. And I know Velocio has a fantastic Black Friday sale going on right now. And pretty much all of the electronics that you use, from heart rate straps to trainers to cycling computers, watches, whatever, there's going to be some deals. So if there's something you've been looking for, definitely check out our favorites. And this is a good time to pick those up for yourself.
Okay. All right. So be careful and do some shopping, I guess is what you're saying.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
We also have a do not buy list for athletes. So side note, if you have like an aunt that always sends you the tackiest athlete Christmas present, or friends that gift you terrible Christmas presents based on you being a cyclist or a runner or whatever, this is an article that you can maybe post in your stories, send to a friend, etc., that reminds them that we do not need cycling themed everything as our gift. And also, please don't buy someone a jersey unless you are very, very, very positive on the sizes.
Right. Yes, that seems fraught. Okay. Well, we have several questions today that we want to get into. Was there anything else you wanted before we got into these questions? Do we want to tease the questions that folks can expect?
That's what I was just about to do. So today we're talking about how to actually do any kind of strength when you only have light weights, a little bit on zone 2 heart rate, some trail scanning tips, and a little bit of, what is our last question here? Riding outdoors this time of year. And as Canadians who just got 6 inches of snow dumped on them yesterday, and it is still not even mid-November, it's not easy.
And that last one was more like, why would you ever ride outside? And I guess in the winter is implicit in that question. But yeah, it was a little more contentious that like it's dumb to ride outside. So that was sort of the fourth one.
Okay, well, I'll read it in a mean voice, I promise. But let's start with some softballs here. So this person says, I only have 25-pound dumbbells. How can I make this harder for things like farmer's carries, squats, etc.?
So I think our last Q&A or two ago, we talked about building out our new home gym and making the transition towards plates. So from your dumbbells, your kettlebells, maybe your little tiny home gym setup to something more substantial, whether that's, you could go to a gym as well, but a lot of people then take the step. They are running out of weights. They'll take the step and they'll get barbells. They'll get a squat rack. They'll get a trap bar. Is very common. I saw on Amazon and I'm sure in other places you can get these. I think it's CAP that makes them. They must be like, it comes almost like IKEA furniture, flat packed, I guess is the word for that.
Okay.
So it's a trap bar that bolts together, sort of like your IKEA chair, but then you can put plates on the side of it, and it's a little bit more compact than a traditional trap bar or hex bar. But this is for deadlifting. This is the one that you'll often see in the Stacy Sims Lift Heavy Shit pictures are often someone deadlifting with a trap bar rather than a straight Olympic bar. So there's things like that are making that home gym still compact. It could fit not in a closet, but maybe under a couch or tucked away, not too bad.
Now, I do have to assume this person is asking this because they don't necessarily want to buy something new. Because, when we had this last episode, we talked about we love an adjustable dumbbell that goes all the way up to 52.5 pounds, which is, I think, the standard that they tend to go up to. So I think if you want to hear about like what we think you should have for your home gym, go back to that episode.
Right. Yep.
But I think this person is asking because they don't want to add more necessarily.
That's right. Yeah. I think that's fair. And there's some hesitancy there. It's a spend thing, or it's a
space thing, right? Like we talked about this past episode. We were only able to do after 10 years because we now have a garage, and we didn't.
And that was part of the choice. Like I joke with people that we sort of moved so that we would have a place for our indoor training and bike storage and maintenance. But that's basically what we moved for. That was the large chunk of why we moved and did that big choice. But that, of course, came over years. So anyhow, 25-pound dumbbells. You got two of them. This is what we have. This is like a deserted island type scenario. That's what we're going to go with. So let's say this person I recall was trying to do like some farmer's carry. So you usually lift up a really heavy weight, like heavier than you would even squat potentially, and walk down. They say down and back is usually enough, or even just down, like across your room is enough, or across the gym. So 25 pounds for most people, that's not a lot of weight. Like 25 pounds is nothing, right? Most of these people are carrying maybe children that weigh 50 pounds or something like that.
Well, I think you just troubleshot that problem. Just put your kid in like a lifting harness and just carry them down.
But yes, that would be a solution, and you could have a workout friend. That's great, and certainly that's a way to do it. The other thing you can do is you can sort of take that. So if you have two 25s, if you get a firm bag, people will get some of these maybe like an army surplus bag or something that just isn't going to snap apart and dump a bunch of 25-pound plates or dumbbells on your toe. You could put two 25s on one side. So we could load up and do what they call a suitcase carry or a sack of potatoes type carry on over your shoulder. If you have a bag or some way to tie these together really firmly. I've seen people use things, big tie downs, like not a toe strap for cycling, but something like that. A toe strap's actually pretty strong, but I'm not going to tell you to do that. But you could really fasten two 25s together, and now you have something that you could maybe hold on one side, which is going to challenge. It's not more weight per se, but it would give you a 50-pound weight that you could then do on one side. Or maybe you also have some smaller weights, so now you could do a little bit of weight on one hand and then that 50 on the other hand. You're also allowed to be lopsided that way. So a 10-pound on one side and then these 50s on the other side.
Now, I would actually, and maybe I'm completely wrong in how I'm thinking about this, I would say I'd go 50 on one side and no weight on the other, because then you're actually really forced to work your core to kind of counterbalance that 50 on the one side. Whereas if you have 50 and then like 25, it's actually pulling you more toward your center line. So I think your core stability is actually more challenged when you have all the weight on one side.
This is true. What you would then, like the question would be whether it's too much. So then that would be something you could progress over time as playing with that dispersion. Because 50 pounds on one side, so people are going to walk with their hips and they're going to notice that your hip is hitting the hand that's carrying the weight. The other thing I had said to this person is sometimes just elevating the weight. So rather than holding it at your side, you could hold it in a rack position. So hold it sort of like on your shoulders, the two weights, like each hand has the 25, hold them at your shoulders, or go one or two arms straight overhead. So an overhead carry is also very challenging. Be careful when you do this, like, because it's obviously putting 50 pounds over top of your head. But that would be another way to make some of these weighted carries heavier. But you could apply this same stuff that we're talking about to something like a lunge or a split squat. And that would be the other thing, is if you haven't gone to some of the one-legged variations or the lunge variations, then that would be the next place to go. If you've just been doing squat or two-legged deadlift or something like that, then you could certainly go to something like a lunge, or a split squat's just a lunge where you don't move your feet. So you're sort of standing in a split stance, and then you go up and down. You can look up split squat or lunge. Those would be great variations that are going to put this challenge to more to one side. A lot of cycling stuff will use Bulgarian split squat, which is just the back foot is up split squat. So you're going to maybe put your back foot, your back toe on a step, not too high. A lot of times the photos you'll see, the videos you'll watch will be far too high. It'll be up on like a big plyo box, or like something that's like a foot or 2 feet tall. And then people will say, oh, you get a good stretch in your hip. But the problem is then the actual exercise is really given up. So I always try and encourage a lower, like even an aerobic step, or just one step of your stairs. The bottom step is about the height at least to start at for a Bulgarian back foot up split squat. But that's a very common cycling exercise because it really challenges that front leg in I think a cycling specific way, which is, it is what it is. I don't know if that's that important, but it's going to be a very challenging exercise. So that would be one exercise to definitely try and include. And then the other one would be step ups, would be a very common cycling exercise that, again, is more 1 foot dominant. And you can really challenge. I mean, if you get them on a box, even without weight, and you make them go really slow and barely use that other leg that's sort of touching the ground, the one that's not really working, you don't let it work really at all, then that is very, very challenging. And again, the higher that box goes, the more challenging, the bigger the range of the motion. And that would be probably the final thing to consider. Is a lot of times people will say, oh, I have not enough weight, but then they aren't actually doing a fuller range of motion. So that might be they're doing a quarter squat, they're not going down that much. Could they get down to more where their hips are below their knees, or like even a full depth squat when they say sort of like butt to grass? I'm not swearing here on purpose, but that's what they say. It's sort of like this full range squat. And this isn't for everyone, depending on your knees and sort of health and so forth. But that would be the other thing to look at, is like, can you increase the challenge with a range of motion, which is a great way to do it as well. So those would be the main ways I'd look at, is just sort of like going to more single leg variations, seeing can you put more weight on one hand, and maybe you actually have more weights than you realize once you start tying a few of these together carefully. I didn't tell you to do it. But yeah, you could tie 2 10s together to get another 20, and again, sort of go that way. And yeah, so those are sort of the main things I can think of. Looking up body weight exercises would be the other one that occurs to me, I guess. Would be, sometimes people don't realize, if you raise your feet up with a push-up, it makes it harder without getting any more weight. So now you all of a sudden are pushing more weight on your push-up, say. So there's lots of things like that where we can use different leverages to adjust the load that we're pushing, the resistance that we're pushing. It's not always like an external weight that's required. You can also just put your body in different positions to really change the strain on the body. Things like that Bulgarian split squat where that back foot's up on a step. It's not more weight. It's just changing the emphasis and where the muscles are positioned, where the body's positioned, how the two sides can help or not.
For sure, yeah. And I think the last thing I'll add to that is, as you're not doing the thing we suggested with this, putting weights in bags, but I mean, hit up your kitchen cabinets, right? Like add a couple cans or like a gallon jug of water if you really want to go heavier.
Yep.
But it's a 10-pound bag of rice. I was actually thinking, like, the bags of rice we buy pretty bulky ones, and they literally have a handle to them. So right there, if you had the 50 on one side, you've got like a 15 for the other side, just in your bag of rice.
Could be. Yeah. And certainly those big jugs of water are great. I've seen Home Depot, not to give Home Depot a thing, but a big bucket. I don't know, how big are those buckets? Like whatever a standard Home Depot orange bucket is. If you have 2 of those, there's a great farmer's carry, really the most traditional farmer's carry you can think of.
That's actually what I was thinking is, yeah, like go look in your shed or your garage for what outdoor stuff you have, because yeah, farmer's carry, like it's literally the thought was you're carrying, whether it's, bags of soil or little bags of, tiny rocks or cement mix. Like, there's a lot of ways to, especially when you're talking about just weights that you want to carry around, there's a lot of ways to add weight to that with just what you already have hanging around, or with a very cheap trip to Home Depot.
And then I do think at some point just watching your buy and sell or different things like that, I guess you mentioned like it's sort of the season for sales as well, as it's not a bad investment to get heavier weights, especially when we're trying to go from those 10s and 20s up to a bit more. I think we talked about last time that once you get to a certain weight, and it depends a bit on your body size and your experience with strength training, there is like a point where these dumbbells and kettlebells are going to be too heavy for you or your ability or your body size, right? Like if you're a 220 pound man, obviously you can handle a 70 pound kettlebell, but if you're a 110 pound person, it's just going to be harder to move a 70 pound thing around. Not that you can't, there's techniques and there's lots of strong, tiny people. But obviously the relative like size of those weights is going to be more challenging. So you're going to get pushed towards, we need to get a squat rack. We need to get these plates, these barbells to do those types of exercises. So, but I do think a lot of people, when like getting a 35 pound or a 50 pound weight in your home is just going to like force you to do more strength and more heavy lifting. And I don't think that's a bad way to spend money if you have the money to spend.
For sure. Okay, before we get into our next question, let's take a quick break to thank our sponsors over at Payable. So Peter, what is our payable form of the week?
So this week, it's a tutor form. So let's say we were a tutor, we're helping the youth pass their courses, or maybe we're a piano teacher, I guess is sort of a tutor or something like that too. You're sort of have this service. And so you might sell them in packs of 6 or 3 or 10 or a year or something like that. So the payable form lets you set this up. You have a little drop-down menu. You say, I'm paying for 1 session or 3 sessions or 10 sessions. There's a price beside it. The person selects it, submit the form, and then they can check out. And this is really what Payable allows, is to do a checkout off of your payable form, off of your Google form that you've designed and is for your tutoring services in this case. And then you can get paid and carry on with your tutoring services. So it really simplifies this for these small, especially like home businesses, and you don't want a big website or something like that. It's really a great solution for some of these smaller, maybe even side hustle type businesses where you're going to be you want to get the money, the person's name, what day are they coming on, that type of thing. You can really build out with this solution. So that's our form of the week. That's the tutoring form, and that was delivered by Payable Forms.
Peter, you're not getting a piano.
Yes, I'm going to set up the form for my piano tutor.
No piano.
Well,
no
we'll see.
Piano.
We'll see. Once I finish my classic novel here coming up, I'm closing in on my yearly goal of reading 50 classic novels. So I'm going to finish over a month early. So I'm pretty psyched about this goal. But the next thing up, I was thinking I'm going to have so much time to play piano. So
I'm very proud of you, but also a little horrified about this. Black Friday is coming up, though. So if you want to maybe bookmark the piano you want, I will keep an eye on it. Maybe it will show up under our Christmas tree. Who knows? Or maybe I'm just trying to avoid you buying one. So I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely going to get it for you for Christmas. And then I'm not. Okay. Very Grinchy of me.
Okay.
But anyway, next question. Okay. Optimal range for zone 2 endurance. So this person is saying, when we talk about zone 2, we often say it's below 75% of max heart rate. That's our cap. But what is the base or the lowest a heart rate should be to stay in zone 2? Mm-hmm. Hashtag it depends.
Yeah, I guess that's it. Like, what would you think about, like, when you're out running, is there like a too slow that you're wasting your time and you just, like, I don't know, like, how do you think about that?
Okay, so I would argue that there's a difference between running and cycling in terms of, like, I don't really believe in junk miles for running necessarily.
But what do you mean by junk miles? Because that's, I think, what they're saying. Like, at some point, is this junk miles?
Yeah, I'm saying in running, I don't really think that like a really slow mile is a junk mile. I think junk miles in running actually are when you've turned up your like 5% over your zone 2 and you're into that like just a little bit too hard, and like it's going to wreck you for a week.
Yeah, and that was always my contention with junk miles, because I think junk miles can mean a lot of different things. It's not really a defined term, as most of these terms are poorly defined, honestly, including zone 2. But yeah, you could see people say that, like, oh, you're just noodling around and those are junk miles. That's like the old long, slow distance was just like, you just go out and pedal and like eventually you'll be done the ride and that'll be great training. And then I always felt like it was actually junk miles are more like you're saying, where it's like intensive endurance, getting into that no man's land, they sometimes call that, or you're going over that aerobic threshold and it's sort of hard, but not hard. And yeah. And then I also felt like you could have junk miles that aren't steady. So you're sort of surging up into like threshold and then you're dropping down to coasting. And I felt like those were junk miles. So like junk miles is a tough term, but those are probably all things to generally be careful with, how much of your training is dedicated to it.
Yeah. So when it comes to actually staying in zone 2, I'm a pretty firm believer, like we've talked about this ad nauseum. I don't like tech overly much, which is embarrassing for someone who's in this world, but I don't track heart rate when I run. I strictly go by the talk test. Like, can I have a conversation? And it should not be like the easiest conversation in the world. I shouldn't be able to monologue. So to me, if I can comfortably converse with someone, but not necessarily have like a lengthy rant, then I'm in zone 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a bit of feeling connected to that. And I think that's, you'll always see that subjective feeling comes back where you can sort of decide, like, is this something that you're going to maintain for a long time? Or is this, or is this nothing? Like, are you walking? And it's tough because it's dependent on how fit someone is. Because in your example, like, there's probably people who can walk and it is like zone 2. However, we're going to define that, which we will define in a second. It's sort of variable on the person, right? But there is this like perception of effort that you don't want it to be maximal. You probably don't want it to be moderate, but you want it to be low intensity training and not super hard, right? Like you want to be able to do it for a while. So it is difficult. And running is, as you say, sort of tricky because I don't know that I ever feel like I can run forever. Like when I do my usual 5Ks, I'm not going super hard, but I also don't know if I want to continue for a long time if I have the choice.
And that's where you and I differ.
Right. So a lot of times you can look these type of things up, whatever system. I always say, like, the thing is you have to choose a system and believe in it. So when I say system in this case, it means like your zones, like what type of zones are you using? Kogan zones? Are you using 80-20 zones? Are you using Joe Friel zones? What is the
Borg scale?
And then I always go back and say, like, did you test any of these? And runners are notorious for saying, I'm doing zone 2. And I'm like, can you run a 10K at this pace? Because that's what you're saying. If you're running, I think it's like, if you're running 4:30s and 5-minute Ks, so what does this give us a mileage on this? This is like 7:30s, 8s, 8:30s pace per mile. So this is right. Go and look up what the 10K estimated threshold pace would be for that. And then most of the time people cannot run that fast. It's pretty fast. So that's like, you want to test it. So in cycling terms, this would be like, if you're doing like every Masters man.
Side note, your 10K pace also still feels like too fast for your zone 2 pace. Like,
oh no, this is the threshold. So again, when we're setting zones, you have to pick a maximal value or a threshold value that then the zones get backed off of, right? So whatever you're doing, or your coach believes in VO2 max testing, and then you're backing the zones off of a maximal VO2 oxygen consumption.
Gotcha.
Or a lactate threshold that we're then backing the zones off. So when we say zone 2 or endurance zone, let's just call it endurance zone. That's all zone 2 is there's a zone where we believe we're under the aerobic threshold and we can do this workload for an extended period of time, hours, if not days, in some cases, right? We're sort of running at that pace for a long time. But we only are doing that based on these test values or these threshold paces. At some point we need to determine that. And I think you can back into it. You can say, okay, I think I can run zone 2 at 5-minute Ks. Okay, well then you should just at least look at what that means your threshold setting is or your maximal setting is, and then say, could I do that? And you can be ambitious if you want. I would say you should be a little pessimistic when you're setting your zones and say, like, I don't know that I could actually run that fast. Like, can you run what is 18? So like a 36-minute 10K is, I'm just guessing here, but like something like a 36-minute 10K is probably what's required to have that type of zone 2. So you look this up in your zone system when we're talking about running, but that's what I see. And then in cycling, the classic is like every master's man will ride at 200 watts, but most master's men say their threshold might be 240, 250. And so it doesn't really line up that you would then ride your zone 2 at such a high percentage of that threshold value, right?
Yeah. Okay. So that all makes sense. But the question was, how low can I go? So we talk about the range all the time. So if zone 2 is 75% and under of max heart rate.
Yep.
How low are we? Like, are we going down to 65% of max heart rate, 50% of max heart rate? At what point does it turn into zone 1?
Yeah, so that's in most zone systems. You could look this up.
I was going to say, this is like actually just a value that is dependent on the system.
No, it's tricky. Like in 3-zone systems, which I increasingly am moving towards using more of this, like we're under aerobic threshold, which would be like the first zone, endurance, we'll call this low intensity. And then there's moderate, that's between the 2 thresholds, between the aerobic and we'll say anaerobic threshold or functional threshold power, something like that. In the middle, that's your tempo sweet spot threshold, all sort of in there. And then above that would be like VO2 max, anaerobic sprint. And that's above your FTP, or above your threshold. And those are super messy, and physiologists are very grumpy because I just like made all these things the same. But roughly there's like those 3 things: low, moderate, high, right? Moderate you can do for about an hour. And then above that is hard, right? And so I increasingly move that way. So in that system, it isn't necessarily clear like what does create that bottom of zone 2 when it isn't enough. So, and I do think that for most people, if you're outside moving, like this is my answer to your question, if you're outside moving, it's enough. Most athletes are either do not have the fitness that they can do the sport without it being enough. Does that make sense? So like that master's person with a 240 watt threshold, to move forward, they're going to be into whatever zone 2 is for them. Like the bicycle just basically won't move, assuming they're pedaling, right? And I sometimes add like, I don't want you to be sprinting and I don't want you to be coasting when we're talking about these endurance rides. If you can avoid it, as you can avoid it, that's probably an element of endurance training. But if you look out, so I'm thinking like a Kogan power zone, it's I think 57 to 75%. It's quite a wide zone. Like, and 57% is a lot, right? Again, take that example of like a 200 watt threshold. We're getting down towards like 100 watts, 120 watts as the base for that. So again, a bicycle like needs a certain amount of watts to move forward with us strapped to it. So that it's pretty wide. So I just don't think most people it's even like a relevant consideration. I think if you're outside doing your run, doing your bike, like it is fast enough. Don't stress about it, because rarely, like I just rarely see it being a concern. But that would be the thing, would be to look up what is your zone, and you can look at it, and that would be the one. So by heart rate, I usually say around 60 or 65% is probably about where you'll see that. But again, it's very few people that can actually like do the sport and have their heart rate down that low. It's like, it's a great sign that you have fitness once you can do that. But a lot of people, the second they're moving, their heart rate's up in that 60% type range.
Because like that 60% is shockingly low, right? Like if your max heart rate is 180, now I'm like, oh no, I've
created a
set
really
myself
tough.
up to
I
do
would
math.
just go with 200 because it's like an easy math there. Yeah.
But the problem is like 200 is like, you're a young man, right? Like a lot of people our age do not, like my max would be like 175.
Yeah, but even say 200. So then 60% is 120. Okay, but like 60% of that is 120. So let's pretend you have that many heart rate beats. Like how many of us could actually move at 120 beats a minute in running or biking, right? Like it's quite, so now even you could do your own math on your max heart rate or your threshold heart rate to back that out, but that would be, right? It's like,
well, I'm saying like I haven't seen over 170 on my heart rate in I don't know how long. So I'm going to say 170 for mine. So 60% of that is 102. I go to like 150 when I have to make a phone call. Mm-hmm. So
yeah,
I don't know that I could run at 102.
Yeah, and you're quite fit and efficient at running, right? So that is what I mean. Like usually it's not really a consideration. For you, like it probably is, like flat walking would be zone 1. That's recovery pace. And so a walk on the bike is what we often say with recovery pace on the bike. So this is soft pedaling with a kid or very flat terrain where you're really not putting the power down. But I do tend to come back to that. It's probably good enough if you're out doing the sport. Chamois time is training time. And maybe that little addition when we're talking, especially if we use the word zone 2, that we're not sprinting and we're not coasting. And that's what I often see is like people will be surging big and you'll see heart rates like 170 beats when your max heart rate's 170 beats in what someone's calling a zone 2. And so that's where I get more issues is people blowing over the top of the zone. I rarely have anyone who they're like being a lazy athlete where they're not pushing their heart rate up, they're not moving, right? Like most of us are trying to go out and do the sport when you're doing the sport. So I don't think it's a huge thing, but the quick question or the quick answer is whatever system you're using, you can probably look this up. So in Training Peaks, it would be under the settings. You could also just Google, heart rate zones and look up and see what it would look like. But it is usually for heart rate, usually around 65% of max. I'm very bad at doing the math on threshold heart rate. I don't really use it as much, but what would it do? It would be higher percentage or lower?
Yeah, it'd be like 85% of max or something.
85% of threshold, you mean? I don't know if that's true.
No, threshold. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Zone 2 would be the percentage of threshold.
Yeah, I've backed myself into a hole.
Oh, boy.
And then for power zones, though, it would be, again, sort of that like 57 of threshold power. So not of max power. That doesn't make sense. But threshold power, it goes up to about 75, 77% in a Kogan zone. And then usually, I believe it's around 57% is where that zone. So a very big power zone. And again, most people just aren't going to be down towards the bottom of that power zone.
Gotcha. Okay, if you're not already so confused that you needed to rewind this 20 times, let's get on to the next question. I find I'm getting caught off guard by obstacles and in the wrong gear on the trail. Any ideas?
Sure. Yeah. And so probably this person, the other thing I was thinking is you'd almost want to see them like go around corners as well and see like where are they putting their eyes. So when I'm coaching, a lot of times I'll try and like stand in different places and watch them corner and not necessarily on the first corner. I won't yell like, I gotcha. But, you just see what the person does. And a lot of times that person is really attending. They're looking at what's now, like what's right in front of their wheels. They're not looking ahead. But you want to be careful when like that's like the most cliche thing is like look where you want to go, look ahead, but it doesn't really give the person like what they're looking at. And especially for a beginner, they're seeing everything actually, but then they're just overwhelmed by the amount of information they're getting. So the idea of trail scanning is that you're sort of scanning, they say now and next, and the thing is that it's supposed to be an active search for information. And so it's not just look ahead, it's keep looking to what's next. And you keep having to scan ahead. And so you could say also you want to keep your head up, but you also want to be just actively scanning ahead. So we're always trying to find out what's next and really moving that head around. With kids, sometimes the concept of like I think it's like an owl, what's the like owl head, like how owls can like move their eyes and their head like sort of without moving the rest of their body. So you're looking for this like chin like looking to the side and the eyes searching. Maybe you're seeing like around the corner and getting like some early information to what's coming. And so it's this scanning and this active search for information that doesn't happen overnight. It's not a switch, but it's trying to talk people through and bringing their attention to things that they can be searching for that are relevant. So this might be, again, okay, there's a hill coming and it looks like there's some roots on that hill. An expert rider is going to really see that and know that that means they need to put in a big push before the hill, early in the hill, so that then they can almost soft pedal over those roots. They don't need to ask for traction on the hill. Whereas a beginner rider won't really see that it's coming, won't really be ready with the gearing to start going up the climb. And they'll just do this almost like they're on a trainer where it's just like the same power all the way up the climb. What happens when they hit the roots? They slide out on the roots or they bump into the roots and fall over or something. So it's that like early information and then knowing what to do with it. So again, for a beginner, there sort of has to be this like, okay, like we'll look at this hill. How can we make it up this hill? What if you go faster on this hill? And then also just that ongoing conversation about searching or trail scanning. And so again, now and next is sort of the word there. But it's a very tricky thing. Like there's not going to be like one single day where you just like learn to look ahead on the trail. But sometimes that concept of searching and keep saying to yourself what's next can be a useful cue to be actively searching.
Love it. And I think this gets neatly into our last question of why ride outside when I get such a better workout when I'm inside?
Yeah, so that you're right. Like that last question basically is like, because you're going to be the person who's pretending they're riding a trainer and just you won't know what to search for. Like your brain won't have associated routes on upcoming hill with surging, gear change, prepare to like unweight on routes. Like you're just going to know like, meh, like the sound of the trainer.
Oh, I think I actually have like the perfect example for this. Recently we were at Christie Cross and I was talking to an athlete that I won't name, but became very famous for winning a certain esport academy of sorts and made it into a very high-end road team. And he was telling me that all season he's had riders coming up to him and saying like, wow, I didn't expect you to handle as well as you do in the pack. And that's not because he's amazing at esports and he won that academy. It's because he spent a lot of years on trails, mountain biking,
right,
and riding with people and racing outdoors.
And had a great coach maybe as well.
And had a great coach, yeah.
So what are you saying with that? You're saying that like the mountain biker like is used to like dealing with chaos, or what do you mean?
Well, yeah, I'm saying you can be great on the trainer, and yes, that like makes you a very fit athlete, and you can maybe win an esport thing. Mm-hmm. But the reason that riders were saying that they were like impressed with him is because there have been other people from programs such as that that have not done as well in the peloton because they're very, very fit individuals, but not necessarily very, very skilled individuals at racing on the road, for example.
Right. And so I think in maybe our last Q&A too, we were talking about my no indoors till December challenge, which is just a challenge. Like it's just an idea. But people will sometimes get very angry. And you even said like, oh, like I've changed my mind on it. And I didn't think I had changed my mind on it.
Glassford was on the trainer yesterday. I just want to let everyone know.
Well, and that's, I think, the point of context, right? We don't have to do the same challenge every year. Every year is a little different. And you do want to consider what someone has available to them. What is their context and what is their goal? So most people's goal is not December or January. We have a friend who's doing a marathon run in December and it's like in a warmer climate, but we exist in a winter climate. So there's obviously like some limitations training in a winter environment if you have to be specific. But if we're not needing to be specific, i.e. we're in the base phase, it's a long time till our race, we do not need to be that specific. So we can do things like cross training. We can reduce our training load. And that's the idea with the no indoor till December challenge, is just to be careful how much indoor cycling time or treadmill time would be the same for runners that we're spending in November, October, September, because it's a very long winter for most people, a lot of people, at least in the northern hemisphere, where we have to be on the trainer potentially till April. And there is a period in March, April, May, where we need to be specific and really working on speed and race stuff that might require indoor trainers as the weather settles into spring and summer. And we will have ridden the trainer and indoor cycling and done all these things to train over the winter. And so it's a long run into it. So the reason for that challenge is just trying to mitigate some of the indoor time and the boredom and the motivation drop before we get there. But certainly someone who can't train during the day or the daylight hours or lives in a city where it's very icy and there just isn't a lot of places to actually ride a bicycle and there's snow all of a sudden, we're obviously not suggesting that that's a better training stimulus than doing an indoor trainer. But we do like the idea that like maybe on the weekend you can get to somewhere where you can ride outdoors or drive somewhere, or cross train is the other option. Like maybe you do start running a little bit or hiking or something. Certainly the strength training plays in there. But the idea, I guess, backing out would be that when you ride indoors, the analogy I've used in the past is that it's not baseball, it's the batting cage, right? So it's I don't know how much everyone's into baseball. It seemed like a lot more people got into it as the Blue Jays almost won the World Championships there.
I'd like to point out we did not watch a single game.
And so the batting cage doesn't have all the elements of baseball, and it certainly doesn't have the pitcher. And so we've had Rob Gray on the podcast before, and he's sort of like someone I've sort of followed along with here, and sort of like the way I've gone with my coaching philosophy. And so Rob talks a lot about when batters he works in baseball and professional baseball, they're watching the pitcher, they're standing, they're ready, they got their bat ready, they're at the plate, and the pitcher's about to throw, and they're watching for all these cues and all this information from the pitcher, where their shoulder is, where their feet are. They're watching for the ball coming out of the hand of the person. So the problem with a batting cage, especially older or like a pitching machine, is that there isn't a hand, there isn't a shoulder, there isn't a pitcher. There's just this ball comes out of this machine. So the cues that they're listening for and watching for are different. And so this would be similar even with a virtual world that you're riding on your trainer. You're not getting the same cues and the same information that you're going to get on the trail or on the road. Maybe we're getting closer with some of this virtual stuff, but that would be the central thing, is like you don't have to, the gear shifts, the where you're looking, the having to stand to bump over things. There's just not nearly the stuff that has to happen outdoors.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's more on that.
No, I think that pretty much sums it up.
But I don't think it's a either or. I think it's like a both and. Like, I think our ideal, we've had people over the years who they have a beautiful fat biking environment right outside their front door. They want to go fat bike every day. They have lots of freedom of time. So all the complaints or the reasons we might use indoor training, time efficiency, I don't have to get dressed, it's safer, all these things, like other people don't have those. They can train at 10 a.m. It's bright out. They have beautiful trails. They have snow year round. They live in the mountains. It sounds fantastic. But they don't want to ride on the indoor trainer. But maybe they have a goal where you do need some speed, you do need some heat exposure maybe. And so for those people, I do try and force them onto the trainer a little bit, maybe twice a week, where we do get some speed and maybe some warmth into their training, so that we do balance the goals that they have, right? And I think that's the most important thing, is to think about, like, what are you preparing for and when do you have to be ready? Because again, that determines how specific, how intense, how much volume that we need to get out of you. So if it's November and it's sort of crummy and you can't get outside and you don't really want to ride the trainer, there's solutions. You have space there. You don't have to push it that hard. But if you're getting ready for a December race, then you might have to use the trainer. And then you mentioned that, like, I'm getting ready for a camp. So like, I'm going to use the trainer now because there isn't outside's like okay right now. And I'll do a bit more outside, but it just isn't super for getting ready to go to a camp in California.
Exactly. All right. Well, I think we will wrap up there. As always, hit us up with your questions, consummateathlete.com. We have an anonymous submission form for questions. You can also hit us up on Instagram at consummateathlete. And again, check out our gift guides, Black Friday guide, favorite products, etc. Again, all over at consummateathlete.com. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good holiday week. Those of you in the US, happy training, and we will catch you on Tuesday. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. If you want to hear more training, racing, and endurance sport advice, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating and review. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at consummateathlete.com for a weekly dose of inspiration and advice straight to your inbox.